Hey guys, I'm Ash and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to go over my master's research or my master's thesis, which was on social media as a new age religion. I have linked it in past videos before and I'll link it again down below if you'd like to read it. So this is probably going to be a bit of a long one today, so I want you to get whatever you're drinking, get into your comfiest clothes, get your robe, whatever, I don't care. Get some snacks and settle down for this video. Today I've got an iced coffee because as per normal in summer in Melbourne it's really humid. Also, before we start, do you like my hair? I got it done the other day and hopefully it still looks pretty good once it is curly again. So we'll see what happens there. So it would be impossible for me to remember everything in my thesis because one, it's 40,000 words long plus footnotes plus references. So I've got my laptop here, so this will help me, and it is titled Social Media and New Age Religion. I don't know if that is going to look right. It's probably going to be backwards now that I think about it. And we've got 8 chapters to go through today. I also forgot to say that before chapter 1 there is a glossary of terms in here used, so I don't want to go over them because there's a lot of them, but if you are interested in them I suggest you go and read my thesis. What I'd like to start by doing is reading the abstract so you get an idea of what this was. And please stay camera, thank you. And I'm just going to read it. So an abstract is like a mini summary of what your thesis is about. This thesis argues that in contemporary Western society, social media has become a new religious movement that expresses elements of the New Age Californian counterculture. The methodological big word. Let's try again. The methodological process I use throughout this thesis to convey the new religion of social media is a social constructionist mixed methods approach, utilizing an autoethnography of my own social media use and a textual analysis using visual analysis techniques to analyze a sample of Instagram influencers. Key findings from the autoethnography suggest some social media users use social media platforms to create alternative realities online, present the self as worthy of devotion, to encourage engagement from their followers, and that a smartphone acts as a New Age Californian counterculture, Bible, or sacred text substitute. Key findings from the textual analysis using visual analysis techniques suggest that the sample of Instagram influencers in this research convey some attributes of the New Age Californian counterculture on Instagram, demonstrating that social media is in fact an implicit religion. These Instagram influencers also act as contemporary totems in our contemporary Western world. They are furthermore a cult of saints social media users attach themselves in order to help understand and explain the world around them, especially in online culture. These findings demonstrate how social media is a new religious movement that reflects elements of the New Age Californian counterculture in new ways because of how social media and religion are interconnected in everyday life. So that's the abstract, and I know there's some very big words in there, and I honestly don't put them in there to sound smart or whatever. I hate people who do that. It's just, that's what the thesis is about, and I don't expect you to understand it from just that. That's just the summary of what we're going to talk about today. Also, for a bit of context, this was finished in 2020, like the end of 2020. So think about the social context at the time, what might have been going on, and I wrote it over 2 years. So 2019 to 2020, I was studying. And I also want to say that I might be a bit rusty going over all the chapters because it was 3 years ago. And I did have to read this over and over again while I was editing as well. But I'm pretty proud of this, and it's my own master's thesis. And I don't think my supervisors would be watching, but shout out to them. I don't want to name them on here, but if you're interested in who they are, you can check out my acknowledgements section. So let's move on to chapter 1, which is in fact the introduction. And Luke's in a meeting downstairs at work and his voice carries, so hopefully you can't hear him over my filming. But basically, social media has definitely become part of a global phenomenon. It is like ingrained in everyday lives, especially Western culture and mainstream culture right now. And I feel like it got even more so during the pandemic. And I forgot to say that this is chapter 1, the introduction. And for the purpose of this thesis, in the introduction, this is where you set up your thesis. So what it talks about, put in your research questions, define anything that you need to define. And I really like my own writing, not to toot my own horn here, but I wrote, as social media has become part of global culture with many connotations to religion, such as followers, community, and belonging, this thesis argues social media has become a new religious movement that expresses attributes of the New Age Californian counterculture in new ways. And I know what you're thinking, Ashley, that's a mouthful. And yeah, it is. It was really annoying to write too. But for the purpose of this thesis, and so that you get a better understanding of what I mean by New Age Californian counterculture, it's a Western phenomenon that stems from the 1960s, 1970s era, American counterculture that was made up of alternative beliefs and practices emerging of Eastern and Western traditions, which rejects some of Western thought but not Western society, so that's how it's different to cults. And many New Age Californian devotees create their own alternative realities, making it a personalized package of meaning that can be called a pick and mix religion, where the devotee chooses aspects they like and discards the ones that they do not like. And that is taken from Alpers and Hoopman, I don't know how to pronounce them, from 2006. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So what are the research questions? So I had 3 questions for this particular thesis. Question 1, is the use of social media similar to the creation of alternative realities in New Age Californian counterculture, in that individuals use social media to create alternative realities to the one or ones they had previously? Question 2, do social media users present the self as worthy of devotion or worship, and if so, in what ways? Question 3, what attributes of the New Age Californian counterculture can be applied to Instagram influencers? And to answer these questions, what I used is a socially constructionist mixed methods approach. And I made use of methods such as autoethnography and textual analysis using visual analysis techniques. What is this jargon? So an autoethnography is a type of self-ethnography, so it's the study of the self, and you're kind of analysing yourself, which I do on a daily basis anyway, so I thought maybe let's try it for this thesis. So basically, myself or any individual would draw upon their own experience, observations and reflections through themselves to understand and interpret outlying social, political and cultural phenomena. And I sort of have it throughout this thesis, but it does have one own chapter in chapter 5. I also use a textual analysis using visual analysis techniques to analyze the top 10 most followed Instagram influencers of 2019, and this was taken from Influencer Marketing in 2019. And these findings are presented in chapter 6. The rest of the introduction talks a little bit about the findings, but I'll save that for later on. And then it also gives a rundown of the thesis outline from chapter 2. So chapter 2 is my methodology. Chapter 3 is called the New Age Californian Counterculture, and it's a bit of history on that. Chapter 4, I love the title that I came up for this. It's called The Digital Canopy, Content, Community and Connection. And it looks at a history of communication technologies, the internet and social media. And this is probably the chapter where I learned the most of like the history of the internet, the history of social media, things like that. And it was so interesting. Chapter 5 is called The Self, the Soul, and the Social. And this is the autoethnography chapter. Chapter 6 is called Hashtag Insta-Famous, Devotion, Divinity, and Deities. And I'm just really proud of the titles I came up for these, honestly. And this is the textual analysis using visual analysis techniques chapter. Chapter 7 is the discussion, so that's the analysis section. And then lastly is like the conclusion and implications of this research and also limitations. So I've talked a little bit about chapter 2, the methodology section already, talking about the autoethnography and the, what's it called? The textual analysis, forgot for a second. But I just want to read a little bit of chapter 2 just so you get a better understanding of it, and also helps refresh my memory too. So, digital tools such as social media enable increasing interactivity and connectedness online. Humans need sociality, often thriving in collective groups, and many people may feel isolated or alone if they become detached from such groups. And that's taken from Peter Berger in his book, The Sacred Canopy, from 1967. Amazing book. I suggest you go and read it if you can find it. The use of social media can strengthen bonds, ties, connections, and communities while simultaneously providing a platform to create content and present the self in particular ways. The ability to personalize social media profiles allows users to display their identity, lifestyle, and manage social relationships. Many people use social media to find out who they are, create their own self-brand, encourage devotion from their followers, and in turn capitalize on this. I mean, I'm kind of trying right now. Doing social media research through analyzing and interpreting user-generated content allows researchers like me and you to gain insights into why people use social media, enables data to be collected in real time, and provides opportunities to discover trends, themes, opinions, and collect a wide range of information without any geographical or time constraints. So one of the reasons I chose to analyze social media for this research is I was interested in cults and things like that, but my supervisors were like, that's probably not going to get you anywhere in life. And look at me now, talking at a camera. But anyway, they were like, why not look at social media or something like that and look at religion, something more contemporary and more relevant to today's society. And I didn't really want to do a survey because I thought that was boring, and I never really go by the book. Like a traditional 9-to-5 job doesn't work for me, mainly because my brain doesn't work that way. Sometimes I can't sleep. Sometimes my health issues get the better of me. So I think alternative things really work for me, and this was kind of the alternative, studying social media platforms. How did I come up with this? Again, I'm going to read off this because I feel like the way that I wrote was really good in this. So to create research questions based on the concept of social media as a new religious movement, I first had to identify a religion to allow me to explore this concept. I originally chose the New Age. So when you think of New Age, think of like, I guess, hippies, Eastern and Western traditions being like a pick and mix. And I chose New Age because it frames the self as an entity that is worshipped and viewed as sacred. So the self as a god rather than God being separate from us. And in social media, it's very similar. The self is also central, and users are encouraged to commodify the self online. Think of the rise of the TikToker right now. It's like up here, there are like so many people online that I have no idea who they are, but they have like 6 million followers just from doing silly TikToks. I'm low-key a little bit jealous. So to begin, I first researched what the New Age was. I reviewed relevant literature, as you do, to identify how the New Age arose and spread through Western society, so how it became popular and identified that a New Age Californian counterculture from the 1960s onwards is now predominantly emphasized in the west coast of America. So I use Californian counterculture because that's like really where everything was, the worship of the self. I think that like hippie 1960s, 1970s counterculture. And I term it the New Age Californian counterculture. And if I just say New Age, I am talking about New Age California counterculture. It's just a mouthful. And then from reviewing literature on the New Age Californian counterculture, I identified some key characteristics of this particular counterculture, which I will talk about in chapter 3, and then also used to analyze influences in chapter 6. And then I created my research questions based on this literature. And then secondly, I researched a brief history of communication, the internet and social media platforms by reviewing relevant literature again to show how contemporary Western society has developed into a digital canopy. And this research is presented in chapter 4 and also helped determine which social media platform I would choose to analyze a sample of social media influencers, because there just wasn't enough room to do more than one platform. So I chose Instagram mainly because it's one I'm on all the time, it's highly visual, it's highly engaging. And then back to my research questions. So I know this is a little repetitive, and just as a reminder, question 1 was, is the use of social media similar to the creation of alternative realities in New Age Californian counterculture, in that individuals use social media to create alternative realities to the one or ones they had previously? And this question was informed by Alpers and Houtman's 2006 claim that the New Age Californian counterculture encourages people who are dissatisfied with some of Western thought to find their own personalized package of meaning, and also create an alternative reality where they do not have to reject all of Western society fully, so they don't have to go and join a cult to reject some of the values that are prominent in Western society. Question 2, as a reminder, was, do social media users present the self as worthy of devotion or worship? And if so, in what ways? And question 2 was informed by Paul Heelis's 1996 claim that in the New Age Californian counterculture, the self is sacred and can be worshipped. So like, think of the self as a god. That's probably the most basic way to put that, or a worship of the self. And again, as a reminder, question 3 is, what attributes of the New Age Californian counterculture can be applied to Instagram influencers? And this question was developed to understand how these influencers attribute the New Age Californian counterculture on the platform Instagram. And this is probably the most complicated part of the thesis, because when you get to like honors and master's level in sociology, you have to learn all about the research paradigms, and you kind of touch on it a little bit in undergrad, but not heaps. And it's not, I don't want to say not super important in undergrad, but it's more important for the people that do go on to do postgrad research and things like that. So if you're interested in this, and maybe you're in second year sociology at the moment and they're talking about research paradigms, please listen, because at this time I wasn't listening and it wasn't going through my brain. But it did eventually, so it took me a long time to understand these things. So there's different types of research paradigms, and these are basically ways of doing research and different kinds of approaches to do research. So as I said earlier, this thesis is a social constructionist paradigm. And I chose this to acknowledge how religion and social media are interrelated in contemporary society or the world. And I didn't even paraphrase this. This was a quote from Steed in 2004, who says, social constructionism emphasizes that knowledge is socially constructed through discourse and contextually embedded. Multiple realities are recognized as being constructed and negotiated in historical time. Knowledge is therefore also a cultural process of meaning making, as knowledge is not considered to transcend social meaning. So, basically this means that knowledge is co-constructed from reality, from people. It's socially constructed. Like, it's not... I'm trying to figure out a way to explain this. So, knowledge is socially constructed. It's not just individually constructed. Like, we don't come up with all of our thoughts. We have thoughts. Some of them are ours. Some of them are influenced by other people. So, meanings of the social world are said not to be discovered, but instead constructed by humans interrelated with our ideas, language, politics, history, and society. Knowledge is co-constructed rather than individually constructed, and this way of socially constructed meaning is a byproduct of human existence, which means that it's just going to naturally happen anyway. And I really like what I wrote there because it sounds so much better than what I was trying to say before. And basically, wherever we are, so our social context, which I talked about in my What is Sociology video, is the social context, or where we find ourselves, influences our perception of the world. Social context. And we're going to get into some big words, so feel free to skip this part because these really do my head in. I'm going to talk about ontology and epistemology. The ontology I used for this research was that multiple realities and multiple subjective truths exist, where each individual experiences different realities or different versions of those same realities that can all lead to different types of knowledge. So what's an example of this? Say there are two people and they experience something at the exact same time. They're there, but they have two different stories of that. So, multiple truths exist because person A's truth is different to person B's truth. I hope that makes sense. I'm also going to quickly Google the meaning of ontology so it even makes more sense. I don't think this is going to help, but the meaning of ontology, according to dictionary.com, is the branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being. And hopefully you don't have an existential crisis now. And the second meaning of it is a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relations between them. I don't want to get too deep into that because I feel like we'll just spiral into a massive tangent. So let's move on to epistemology. And the epistemology I used in this research was that the realities must be interpreted to discover underlying meanings and understandings of contemporary society. And again, I'm going to Google that so you get a better understanding of epistemology. So my camera just died in the middle of talking about epistemology, and I don't know if that's going to cause me to have an existential crisis, but I put a new battery in, and let's get back into talking about chapter 2. So what's epistemology? It is the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its methods, validity and scope, and the distinction between justified belief and opinion. If you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend going to do your own research. It's really interesting, and if you are in any social science discipline, any humanities discipline, super important. So sociology, psychology, philosophy, all of those things. And the research that I used, again, in autoethnography. So I chose this because mainly I want to study myself because I was interested, and my own Instagram account was the one I could see all of it. Like, nothing was hidden from me, and I only had to be logged in to my account to see everything. And Instagram changed, you never used to have to log in to see content, but now you have to be logged into Instagram to see other people's content. And I guess this is to encourage Instagram as a community. And chapter 2 talks about advantages and disadvantages of such research. And then I used a textual analysis using visual analysis techniques to analyze Instagram and images of the influences that I chose. And again, talks about the advantages, disadvantages of those things in that chapter. So what's the research design? So my research design was non-participant observation of digital data. And digital data to analyze for this research was taken from my own data. I mean, they're taking our data, why not research it and use it yourself to capitalize on? And I used the top 10 most followed Instagram influencers of 2019 according to Influencer Marketing 2019. I don't use these people as participants because they are not participants in the normal sense. They are unaware that this research is being undertaken, although they're probably aware that some research is being undertaken because they're so famous on these platforms. It's unobtrusive and is not interfered by any outside variables. And there's no subjectivity bias from these influencers themselves. And I talk about a little bit of my own historical social media use. And the 10 influencers that I used to look at were number 1, Huda Katan, number 2, Zach King, number 3, Cameron Dallas, number 4, Chiara Ferragni. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her Italian name. Number 5, James Charles. Number 6, Nikki DeJagger or Nikki Tutorials. Number 7, Michelle Lewin. And number 8, Kayla Sines. Number 9, Nash Greer. And number 10, Camilla Coelho. And probably not pronouncing their names right, so I do apologize if one of them happens to stumble across this video one day. But they all had different areas of expertise, which made it like a better sample representation. And some of these influencers have since been cancelled, and I don't follow pretty much any of them anymore. I thought I was going to continue to follow them, but I just got kind of bored. But because they had different focuses, it also demonstrated that no matter the focus, social media reflects the New Age Californian counterculture. And my data collection, what did I do? I wrote notes about my own social media use in a Word document. I wrote down pros and cons and why I use each platform and how long I'd been using them for and what for. And then I was originally only going to have one chapter for an autoethnography, but I found that it worked better to integrate the autoethnography all throughout the research. So it's relating it back to my own social context and my own experience. To collect the data for my textual analysis using visual analysis techniques and those Instagram influencers, I grabbed 10 screenshots of each influencer's Instagram between December 2019 and February 2020. And I chose this period because it was just the holiday period where many people have more time to post on social media, so there's likely more posts. And then I narrowed this down to 3 screenshots from each influencer to enable a deeper analysis. After selecting 10 images from each influencer, I narrowed it down to 3 images. And I did this by purposive sampling. Purpose sampling. So I sampled on purpose is what I'm trying to say. And I used my intuition to choose the most representative examples. I looked at the image, who was in the image, what things were in the image, the composition of the image, what the influencers were wearing, where the individual was placed, things like that. I could go on and on. So I read every single caption of these images. Yeah, basically just did a master's thesis just to scroll social media. That's a joke. What else did I do? And because these weren't already on my feed, this was more intuitive. And I also looked at the comments a little bit, and responses on their photos were really positive. I don't know if they're like hidden or like the bad ones were hidden or things like that, but I did find that comments on Huda Katan's Instagram referred to her as Queen a lot. And in online culture, queen is a term used by social media users as a compliment. And then I came up with a list of themes. So what are these themes? These themes are totems, selfies, and relatability, representations of self and expressions of authenticity, commodification of self and advertising, religion, and consumerism. And we'll come back to those themes a bit later. For this research, I had a desktop computer provided to me by my uni. I had my personal laptop, and at the time I was using an Apple iPhone 6. And now I have a Samsung 22 Ultra, which I really love. I prefer Samsung and Android over Apple any day. I hate Apple products, but that phone lasted me a while. And the data was collected at different times and locations from different devices, which also illustrates the point that the New Age Californian counterculture can be accessed from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. So moving on to chapter 3 now, the New Age Californian counterculture. And this chapter really just looks at a history of what this is and what I used in this research. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of the introduction so you get an idea, and I don't want to spend too much time on this chapter. So, the popularization of social media in the West has led to an increase in communication and human interaction being predominantly online. For example, in July 2020, the number of global social media users was 3.96 billion. And this thesis argues that for a significant number of Western social media users, social media has become, in many ways, a new religious movement, taking elements of the New Age Californian counterculture and expressing them in new ways. To explain what is meant by this claim, this chapter first defines explicit religion, implicit religion, and the New Age before exploring a history of the New Age Californian counterculture from the 1960s to contemporary society. In the section on the 1960s, I discussed the rise of the counterculture, the Beats, Carlos Castaneda, self-spirituality and community, Findhorn Foundation and Esalen Institute, and the human potential movement. In the section on the 1970s, I discussed Erhard training seminars, or EST, Dr. Schumann's A Course in Miracles, and the Aquarian Age. In the section on the 1980s, I discussed Marilyn Ferguson, the Aquarian Conspiracy, Shirley MacLaine, and Sheilaism, and in the 1990s to the Contemporary Society section, I discussed the Celestine Prophecy and My Embodied Spirit. After I talk about the history of these things, I present the characteristics of the New Age California counterculture. So I don't want to go into the history of those things too much because they could probably be their own videos on their own, and we're just going to be here for like 4 hours if I do. So let's jump right ahead to the characteristics, because I have talked about implicit and explicit religion before. And again, plugging my own previous video, check out the What is a Sociology video on my channel. But chapter 2 does define it really well, so also read my thesis. And we get to the New Age, where we talk about the broader historical context of that, and it's just has lots of different meanings from different scholars. And it's said to come out of the Enlightenment and Romantic eras, which is when the search for non-institutional based religions began. And the beginnings of the New Age were a reaction against the domination of scientific thought, in a time of longing for self-transformation through consumerism and seeking alternative spiritualities. And I have so many footnotes here, so let's not get into that. Bit more history on the New Age, and we finally get to defining the New Age Californian counterculture. So the New Age Californian counterculture is what's reflected in the New Age, not the actual New Age. And so I think I said this in either the introduction or the abstract part of this video, but I'll just remind you here, the New Age Californian counterculture definition that I am using is a Western phenomenon stemming from the 1960s and 1970s American counterculture that is made up of alternative beliefs and practices emerging of Eastern and Western traditions, which reject some of Western thought but not Western society. Many New Age Californian devotees create their own alternative realities, making it a personalized package of meaning that can be called a pick and mix religion, where the devotee chooses aspects they like and discards the one they do not. So that's the definition again. And then what are the characteristics or attributes that I use to analyze things? Alright, so I finally got to the characteristics. So the first one is pick and mix, so being able to choose something from this religion, this part of society, and have it as your own religion. So like a personalized package of meaning. The second characteristic is millennialism, which is the belief that there will be a golden age or paradise on earth prior to a final judgment day. The third attribute or characteristic is that many New Agers uphold the belief that the self is sacred and can be worshipped. Another characteristic is that the New Age Californian counterculture can be presented as a type of Western post-Protestant spirituality. So Protestantism is a derivative of Christianity, where Protestants reject much of the Catholic Church doctrines, with post-Protestant, I can't read or talk today, post-Protestant, I'm just going to say post here, focusing on individualism, self-righteousness, millennialism, and a sense of being chosen, but without any influence of the Catholic Church. And the New Age Californians' counterculture emphasis on individualism, transcendence, ideal self, and millennialism shows that it is a type of Western post-Protestantism spirituality and a move away from traditional norms and values into a personalized package of meaning or global spiritual marketplace. And then there are 5 additional characteristics of the New Age Californian counterculture from Healess 1996. So these are unmediated individualism, the self-ethic, self-responsibility, and magical power, freedom, and perennialism. So very quickly, but I don't want to spend too much time on these. Unmediated individualism refers to one's belief that they are their own authority and it is only them, not something other, that makes them do the things they do. The self-ethic refers to how New Agers turn to alternative practices instead of traditional practices to find something that works for them. So this is done by listening to the ego's voice of authority. And the self becomes one's own moral code. Self-responsibility and magical power are concerned with the autonomy attached to the self. Freedom is about how people have the desire to be free in order to be human and understand themselves as a person. And perennialism is where all the world's spiritualities share a common truth, with differences that grow out of this truth. And then Tarcher 1988 also specifies the New Age Californian counterculture into 4 attributes. Personal consciousness and the everyday world are part of a divine reality. There is a concealed, higher, authentic self inside humans, which is connected to the divine elements of the universe. The higher self can be accessed and used as a guide for the individual, and the access to the higher self is the purpose of human life. And there's a few more, so important ones are giving a sense of belonging, common values, one being that the world needs fixing, and New Agers also have a clear goal of their own personalized package of beliefs. And there's also a common style in the New Age with emphasis on transcendence and anti-materialism. New Agers also heavily rely on mass communication technologies to broadcast information. So I use all these characteristics or principles or attributes to analyze myself and the 10 Instagram influencers I chose for this research. Alrighty, we're up to chapter 4, so we're halfway there. I hope you're still paying attention because I'm getting sleepy already. But chapter 4 is called The Digital Canopy, Content, Community and Connection, and I'm so proud of that. But this just looks like a history of communication, a history of the internet and social media, and I feel like my camera is not, oh no, hopefully it hasn't been like that the whole time. A history of social media, all of that are really, really interesting. I don't want to bore you too much because history can be boring. So let's get to the things that I find interesting. Communication has a very long history. People communicate in various sorts of ways, and it's happened for so long. According to Nicholas 1992, the diversity of languages are at least 100,000 years old. Communication began with cave paintings and petroglyphs in Neolithic and Upper Paleolithic ages, according to Strauss 1985. Then we had ideograms, writing, and finally the alphabet. Early ways of communication, and then eventually we had printing technologies, the printing press, letters, people could send letters, we had radio, TV, then we had internet, then we had social media. One thing I find really interesting is where the internet actually came from, so I want to find that. But basically they are all leading to one thing, is everything being online. I also talk a bit about digital computers, the history of those, Silicon Valley, history of Silicon Valley, high technology, semiconductors, and this stuff wasn't like stuff I knew anything about, so it was just fascinating to read. MOSFETs, please go and read this yourself because this is a lot to get into. I also talk about the digital revolution, talk about the 1G to 5G generations, all of that. It's the important class of mobile phone for this research was the smartphone, because it acts as a type of New Age Californian counterculture Bible or sacred text substitute. So like you carry your smartphone everywhere you go, similar to how some people might carry a Bible wherever they go. Having your smartphone, as long as you have an internet connection at the time, means you can access your religion wherever you are. But what I find fascinating is the history of the internet the most. And the term internet was coined by the Advisory Committee Federal Networking Council, FNC, in 1995, and that's the year I was born, and referred to the internet as a global information system. The definition was developed from the original conceptualizations of the internet by American psychologist and computer scientist J.C.R. Licklider, or preferably known as Lick. He lived from 1915 to 1990, and also his colleagues helped him a bit. So, why do I find this interesting? Well, the genesis of the internet began in August 1962 with Licklider's series of memos. These memos discussed a galactic network concept where people could access information and data on specific sites. In October 1962, Licklider became the head of the computer research project at DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, where he enlightened like-minded individuals of galactic networking. I just love that term, it's so exciting. Galactic networking referred to a set of computers where individuals, governments, institutions, and corporations could access information and interact with one another. And the term galactic networking has many New Age Californian counterculture connotations. Licklider's vision was to create a new world that is a hub where everyone has access to information, where everything is interconnected. And this is similar to Huxley's Brave New World, the book. Licklider was aiming for a galactic new world. I just find that so exciting. Yeah, nerd alert, I know, that's why I wore my Pac-Man shirt today. And I also note here, additionally, in the same way that Tarcher 1988 suggests the self as a higher being, the galactic networking concept can be thought of as a higher being, a higher consciousness that Licklider would want everyone to have access to. And this ties into the notion of the noosphere. The noosphere was developed by French philosopher and Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. For him, the noosphere is sort of The noosphere is thought higher than Earth itself and consciousness, which emerges through the interaction of human minds, mainly by social circumstances that grow as the Earth's population gets bigger. It is considered an essential progress of human existence, which Talihard refers to as an omega point and considers the noosphere as divine salvation. Isn't that just so exciting? Yeah. So basically, the history of galactic networking and leading to the internet is what we have today. It's just so fascinating. I was so excited by that book. So basically, the internet is like a noosphere, which suggests that the internet is where collective consciousness occurs online through coming together of people from different network spheres. And I don't want to go too much deeper into collective consciousness, ESP, things like that, because big brain energy. But the internet is a place where people can find knowledge, and it continues to live on without human existence. So an example of that is, say someone has passed away and their Facebook profile has been turned into like a memorial page, and they're like living on past their death. And then I talk about things like packet switching theory, blah blah blah, this more boring stuff. Talk about the web, more history, and then I'll probably skip the rest of this chapter because it's a bit boring. Rest is the rise of social media. So social media platforms are a group of internet-based applications that build on ideological and technological foundations of Web 2.0 that allow the creation and exchange of user-generated content. Thank you to Kaplan and Heinlein from 2010 for that quote. Social media applications started on computers, and now they're predominantly used on a smartphone. So they're more user-friendly on a smartphone, I find that. Do you ever like start talking on Facebook on your laptop or your computer and then you're like, no, this is much easier to scroll on my phone? Because I do. Social media began in the 1970s and have since been evolving and adapting to social media users' needs. So the affordances of social media are ever changing, and they'll continue to change. So at the time of writing this, Twitter still existed. Now it's X. At the time of writing this, there was no Threads. Threads now exists. So what I used to look at for myself were Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. And also Reddit, I believe. So I've also got tables in here from the very first social media platforms to what we have now, or what we had in 2020. It did look a little bit different now because things have changed. Thanks, Elon. Yeah, if you're interested in history, have a read of chapter 2. And then I go into a bit about present day social media, so the Californication of what we know and love as social media today. And also how there's like a rise in expecting someone to respond to you straight away, which is really annoying because sometimes I put my phone down and like forget about it and go and do something else. And then suddenly someone's ringing me because they can't get a hold of me, and I'm just like, oh, my phone was in the other room, I'm fine. And we've got like people going live so we can see things in real time, which people love. And because I wrote this in New Zealand at the time, I talk a bit about New Zealand context as well. Chapter 5, the self, the soul, and the social. And I think this is a bit where I talk about my own social media use. And from this thesis, my social media use has changed a lot. It's been 3 years and we lived in a pandemic during that time as well. So that's probably expected, but this is the fun stuff. So I don't want to go over what an autoethnography is again, but that's just what I talk about in this chapter. And I also talk about social media providing context that shapes a person's worldview, opinions, and experiences. And I talk about the affordances of social media. So affordances are the particular ways a person interacts with a material object, thing, or technology, so such as sitting on a chair, which I'm doing right now, or being able to throw a chair, with different chairs created for different individual needs. For example, small chairs are designed for children, larger chairs being designed for adults. And furthermore, affordances are about the constitutional relationship between something and a human being, the way a person intuitively uses something. So in the context of social media, we intuitively scroll, we know how to like something, it just affordances make things intuitive and easy for us to use. And in this chapter I talk about my personal smartphone and social media use. So as soon as I wake up in the morning, I habitually check my phone, or if I wake up during the night, I check my phone. And this behavior became so habitual for me that I often found myself specifically waking up during the night where the only thing I do is check my phone and go back to sleep. It doesn't happen as often as it used to. And I just purposely don't put my phone in another room, one, because I want my alarm. And I would also feel anxious or distressed without my phone next to me. Like, what if something happens? What if I need to call the police? So I just feel safer knowing my phone is on my bedside table. I also like to take my phone everywhere. I guess that's being a woman in Western society. So it's like a safety blanket. It's socially constructed that women are more likely to be victims of crime than men are. At the time of writing this, I lived in Christchurch, so earthquakes are common. If I didn't have my phone and there's an earthquake and I'm stuck somewhere, how am I going to get help? All of that. I also feel empathetic to other people's anxieties or concerns about my safety. And at the time, the platforms I used were Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn, with each platform serving a particular use or purpose. So Instagram, I post photography, food, travel, and lifestyle. At the time, I used Facebook to communicate with friends and family. I used Snapchat the year I began university, as all my friends had it and I wanted to fit in. Reddit is more of a platform when I want to be away from everyone, but also feel like I'm connected to a community of people. I did have a good Reddit account as a teenager that had lots of karma, but unfortunately it got hacked, so that sucked. And then Twitter was a platform used to keep up with news and reality television, and I just started using LinkedIn as an academic at the time. And as I said, Twitter does not exist anymore, it's now X, and I guess LinkedIn's kind of a social media platform. And I talk about pros and cons, what good things have happened, what bad things have happened, and also why I started certain pages. And I talk about why might people share on social media. And Owenson, 2015, investigated the motivations of sharing on social media by surveying 1,056 social media users, and they found 10 common factors for sharing online: learning, self-efficacy, enjoyment, altruism, personal gain, empathy, community interest, social engagement, reciprocity, and reputation. And they were all correlated with each other in some way. So building community engagement, all of that. Other surveys were done in support of this and showed the same thing. And let's get to the themes. So, contemporary religiosity. This is intertwined with everyday life because religiosity is concerned with how a person lives their particular religion, what behaviors they participate in, what rituals they complete daily, and even how people consume products and content in a globalized world. It's less about structured collective religions and more to do with unstructured individual religions. Yeah, and then a little bit more context on that. Then I talk about habitual and realistic behavior, so waking up to check my phone, like rituals I participate in, so secular rituals like scrolling Instagram when I wake up and scrolling at night. Scrolling Instagram and Facebook around lunchtime when I had a break from studying. Posting a photo on Instagram per day to keep a routine, and Instagram's algorithm favors users who post content more consistently, and just goes into lots of that. And I also talk about the smartphone being the device that keeps people connected to others. Then the next theme was community and connection, so that's just a need for humans to find community and connection, and many people turn to religious communities to do so. And the next theme is escapism, so escaping daily life and wanting to be somewhere else sort of thing. But in saying that, you're still connected to the world, so you're not running away from society and joining a cult, you're just scrolling. Talk a little bit about digital capitalism, fun stuff, what Reddit is. And another theme is the digital canopy, and I don't want to get too much into this, but read the book The Sacred Canopy by Peter Berger, 1967, to get an understanding of this. But basically, it's all of us want meaning in the world because of our own mortality. We want to understand where we come from, what happens when we die, all of that. Finally, please focus on my face. Thank you, camera. We are finally at chapter 6, hashtag Insta-famous, devotion, divinity, and deities. And this is where I analysed the 10 influences. So I again talk about Instagram being a highly visual platform where users post photos, videos, stories, things like that. And I talk about micro celebrities, the difference between celebrity and influencer. And my understanding of a social media influencer is these are people who have rose to fame through the self. So they are self-made, and they have risen to fame solely through their use of social media, utilize their self as a brand, establish a sense of credibility from those who they influence, and they gain cult followings by doing so. So these people are different to like actors and actresses, but they might become them later on. This is where I talk about Durkheim's theory on totems. So I apply Durkheim's theory to the 21st century and social media, where I argue that devoting time to following social media influencers is a form of an attachment to a totem. What's a totem? According to Durkheim, 1912, a totem is an animal or plant that a group of people identifies with in comparison to other groups of people who use different animals or plants to identify with. Totems can become sacred and an entity that is worshipped by people who identify with it. A totem can also be a symbol of society without people even realizing, and a totem can be a materialistic principle of God. And relating this to social media influences, these influences are totemic beings, not a replacement of God, but a cult of saints that people attach themselves to, often to give themselves meaning, to make sense of the world around them. And I discuss each Instagram influencer's net worth, their overall themes, and a screenshot of their Instagram profiles. I then reiterate the characteristics of the New Age Californian counterculture, talk about influencer versus celebrity, what's the difference. Number 1 was Huda Kattan. At the time, she had 41.4 million followers on her @HudaBeauty account. She began Instagram in 2012. She does makeup, artist stuff, and blogging. Her net worth is US $610 million. In 2019, it's probably more now. Number 2 was Zach King. He has 22.8 million followers. He started Instagram in 2013. He does vlogging and magic. He was worth US 3.5 million. Then we have Cameron Dallas, who had 21.3 million followers at the time, started Instagram in 2011. Vlogging and self-transformation was his style. He is worth US 4.5 million. Next we have Chiara Ferragni, who has 18.5 million followers. She started Instagram in 2010. She's a fashion blogger and beauty blogger. She is worth US $10 million as of 2019. James Charles, we all know what happened there. At the time, had 16.4 million followers, and I'm kind of interested to see how many followers he has now, if it's gone up or down. He has 20.9 million followers, so it's actually gone up. It's very interesting. But yeah, if you want to look at like their past controversies, look them up. They started their account in 2015 doing makeup and vlogging. They were worth US 12 million at the time. Nikki D. Jagger or Nikki Tutorials. I'm not sure what her last name is now that she's married, but she had 13.8 million followers, started Instagram in 2011, and does makeup and vlogging. She was worth 6 million at the time. Then we had Michelle Lewin with 13.6 million followers, started Instagram in 2014. Fitness and tutorials, she was worth 4 million. Kayla Signs, she had 12.2 million followers at the time, started Instagram in 2012. She posted things like Fitspo, healthy living, self-care and self-transformation, food and travel, and at the time was worth US 48 million, which was combined with her ex-partner, $486 million. That's a lot of money. And next we have Nash Greer, who had 10.4 million followers in 2012, vlogging, photography, and they were worth US 3 million. And finally, Camilla Coelho, 8.6 million followers, started Instagram in 2010, and was a style influencer, did beauty and vlogging, and was worth US 2.8 million. So probably the lowest net worth of all the influencers. I look at like a bit of capitalism and like their net worth, so a discussion on their net worth, because you can't get away from capitalism when you do sociology. And I had a lot of questions. Why are makeup and fashion influencers worth more? Why are Kayla Signs and her ex-partner worth so much? Which influencers use social media just to make money rather than share their passions with their communities? What are the gender politics or underpinnings of this? And I give the following suggestions. In regards to the New Age Californian counterculture, makeup and fashion are two ways people can transform themselves or express themselves authentically. By putting on makeup, a person can change or enhance the way their face looks. If they change clothes, a person may be able to feel like a completely different person, or more in tune with themselves, who they wish to be. An explanation as to why makeup influencers such as Huda Kattan, James Charles and Nikki D. Jagger are worth so much is that with an increasingly visual culture, image economy and socio-technical environment, it may be perceived as important for many people to wear makeup and enhance the way the self looks. This emphasizes the always-on and camera-ready society the Western world has become. And I guess cosmetic companies benefit from these people too, because they use their products, and often they'll create their own products. So Huda Kattan specifically sells her own products under Huda Beauty. And then many followers perceive that they have a parasocial relationship. So quick side note here, because I haven't touched on it yet, parasocial relationships are relationships where you feel like you know a person because of what they put online, and you might feel compelled to talk to them if you see them in public or things like that. It's a parasocial relationship. So think of like the vlogging culture when that started becoming like a big thing. Casey Neistat, all of those sorts of people, they were showing you their authentic personal lives, and that was a new thing in like 2011, and we just felt like we knew this person because of what they put online. And having parasocial relationships really benefits these people's ability to sell their products. Also, because they think they know them through a parasocial relationship, they're more likely to tell their friends, and like through word of mouth, and more people are going to find out about such products. In regards to fashion influencers, so James Charles, I guess Chiara Ferragni and Camilla, with Charles and Ferragni being worth significantly more than Coelho. Social media platforms such as Instagram have changed the way the fashion industry operates. For example, fashion shows used to be for elite people in society, and now there is a democratization of Fashion Week, meaning that instead of waiting for 6 months for a collection to drop in store, designers have to adapt and deliver fashion instantly online. And the designers have to now think about how the images of fashions will appear on social media. And there's only so much content someone can post in a small picture. And also, like, fashion shows are often live streamed, things like that. Kayla Signs and her ex-fiance are worth 486 million combined, and Signs was only worth 48 million on her own, and her revenue comes mostly from her app Sweat with Kayla. And I feel like that a potential reason for her being worth so much is that she focuses heavily on the progress of her followers as well as her own individual progress. So she'll post followers' experiences, their like weight loss journey or health journey, things like that. And her exercises are designed to empower women, help women speak and communicate with one another, and also track each other's progress. And it's a members only forum, so you have to pay to get there. And she's also creating community by getting people to connect with other people on this app, find one another who are in close proximity, and work out together. And I also talk about a bit about having genuine passion and interest for all these things, a little bit about the controversies that went on. And some people like Cameron Dallas and Nash Greer, they post more intimate private moments, which gives them more perceived authenticity, which might mean they're using social media to gain community and connection over revenue. I find that Zach King wants to share knowledge and offer escapism to his followers and may not be using social media solely for revenue. He sells comics and he does like magic tricks online. They're pretty cool. I don't know how much it's changed because I haven't really followed him since 2020. I also found that most of the women are higher in net worth than the men, probably because more women use social media, and that more women are more likely to be social media influencers, and that they prefer visual platforms over textual platforms. So I guess there's more men on Reddit than women. And women might find it easier to create and maintain parasocial relationships with their followers, meaning that they will likely uphold their status, credibility, and authenticity longer than men and create higher revenue. Often consistent with traditional gender norms, where women tend to be stereotyped as more caring, motherly, and submissive. And we can unpack that a lot, but I hate gender norms so much, so I don't want to right now. So the significant overall themes: totem, selfies, and relatability is the first one. So totems are collective symbols that represent both God and society, and often an entity that people attach themselves to. Then here is all the images that I use, and I highly suggest you go check out these images that I used and the analysis of this. There's a lot, so I'm just going to skip over this. Otherwise, again, we're going to be here for like 5 hours, and I don't want to sit here for 5 hours. And I talk about why they might follow them and what benefits that they have for their followers. I also kind of link them to Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, and Beyonce, who might be mega totems. Then the next theme was representations of self and expressions of authenticity. The next theme, commodification of self, so turning the self into a digital commodity so that they can make money. The next theme, advertising, religion, and consumerism, so they advertise. They become totems of consumer culture through the Instagram image, which is a shift into visual piety over sacred text. And there's a bit of a deep dive into each social media influencer or Instagram influencer here, and really cool images, so check them out. Our social relationships through worship of the self and becoming totems. At chapter 7, which is the discussion, and I just called it the discussion because that's all it is. And again, I want to read you some of the introduction before I lose my voice. So, the social element from social media emphasizes that social media platforms are used for social interactions where users create content, share content, chat with other people, and also a technology that allows for the extension of self online. Arguably, a Foucauldian technology of the self is occurring online, where the individual attempts to transform the self through social media technologies in order to find happiness, meaning, or perfection. As well as these explorations of self, a social media user can commodify the neoliberal self, where they think the self as a business. The physical self is engaging in technology where the conceptual extension of self transcends the constraints of the physical world into the virtual online world. Although, to be honest, I don't think the metaverse is doing that well at the moment. But that's an example of that. There are many counterclaims to the idea of social media emphasizing sociality, and that it can also be a place where people become antisocial, standoffish, and narcissistic, or self-absorbed. However, Instagram is a public platform where users devote time to liking content, commenting on posts, and following other users in order to create their own personalized package of meaning through their digital platform. Meanings gained from social media may include, but are not limited to, having a sense of purpose, identity, knowing who one is as a person, collective identity, coping with nihilistic feelings, feelings of improved social connectedness and community, and feelings of belonging. So that ties into similar things of religion. And again, the 3 research questions addressed in this thesis were: is the use of social media similar to the creation of alternative realities in New Age California counterculture, in that individuals use social media to create alternative realities to the ones they had previously? Social media users present themselves as worthy of devotion, worship? If so, in what ways? And 3, what attributes of the New Age California counterculture can be applied to Instagram influencers? The findings from the autoethnography were spread throughout this thesis, but were predominantly explored in Chapter 5, and the textual analysis outlined in Chapter 6. The discussion chapter that we're on now found a few themes: the ubiquity of social media in the everyday world, smartphone sacrifices, secular rituals, belonging not believing, hyperreal selves, and cheerlers. So my autoethnography findings. I found that social media platforms are reflective of the New Age Californian counterculture, where many individuals such as myself use social media to create alternative realities and present themselves as worthy of devotion. And I argue that this occurs by default due to the nature of platforms and participation of the users, and users present themselves as worthy of devotion. It also reflects the idea that the New Age Californian counterculture is continuously evolving and can be argued predominantly practiced online through social media, where many users are unaware they're doing so. The use of a smartphone in today's society, in my experience, has become an everyday secular ritual where the habitual behaviors of people engage and contribute to parts of who they are, which supports my claim that the heavily Protestant metaphorical claim that the smartphone acts as a New Age Bible or a sacred text substitute. Like if a person were to carry a Bible around as they do in a smartphone in today's society, other people would probably perceive them as odd, eccentric, or different, and potentially even ostracize them for what they are doing, which may have severe consequences. If they were carrying around a Bible, for example, they may be searching for affirmation, something to help them cope with life's existence, existentialism, nihilism, and many of the everyday anxieties that people face. As there has been a rise of technology such as the smartphone in contemporary society, this thesis argues that the smartphone is a device that pervades daily life far more than a Bible ever could. The smartphone as a Bible substitute is far more popular and successful than a Bible as a personal device in both private and public spaces. A person uses a smartphone both in public and in the privacy of their own home. No matter where a person is in the world, no matter the time, if a person has access to a smartphone reception and internet, for example through data or Wi-Fi, they will have access to social media and in turn their own implicit religion. Other findings of my autoethnography were that social media platforms give users community and help to create and enhance connections, both online and offline. It can encourage people to fit in with the crowd, facilitate belongingness and sociality, allow digital distraction, and also provide greater meaning for those seeking it. Social media can also help with existential feelings of doubt, uncertainty, and anxiety by providing escapism in moments of distress. So Like, just thinking about when you're going to like the doctors and you're in a waiting room, people aren't really reading the magazines anymore, they're scrolling their phone, or if you're in a lift, you're scrolling your phone. And there's different ways I use platforms and different ways you might use platforms. The textual analysis findings, the influencers that I talked about, those 10 Instagram influencers, they are participating in a form of an implicit New Age California counterculture as they express some attributes of this counterculture. These influencers also act as contemporary totems, where they give meaning to their followers and represent contemporary cultural values and symbols. They are a cult of saints. And as meaning is subjective, each follower will gain a different personalized package of meaning by following such and such. Huda Katan acts as a contemporary totem because she presents herself as authentic, sacred, worthy of devotion, and makes her followers feel connected to her by encouraging them to interact with her, which helps build a sense of community and belonging. Zach King's Instagram demonstrates him as a totem because he provides escapism to his followers by relying on technology to connect people in a way that resembles church-going behavior. Cameron Dallas presents himself as a totem on Instagram by building community, where he presents himself as a type of secular, profane, digital idol to whom his followers should devote time, while also coming across as authentic and relatable. Chiara worships herself online to encourage a cult of commodification from her followers and creates connections with her followers by presenting herself as authentic and showing her followers carefully curated personal glimpses into her everyday world. James Charles acts as a totem by building community and endearment by calling his followers sisters. Nikki D. Jagger utilizes unconventional makeup looks to express herself and creates community through her passion for makeup and giving makeup tutorials on social media. Michelle Lewin's Instagram demonstrates her as a totem because she worships herself and provides community through fitness and fashion. Kayla It Signs acts as a totem on Instagram because she encourages her followers to exercise and create community and belonging together. Nash Greer acts as a totem because he offers relatability, and Camilla acts as a totem because arguably appears she is worshipping herself on Instagram. And all of these influencers can be described as Sheilas, where they are contemporary hyperreal totems people follow. Hyperrealism, I should do a video on that, that's fun. And they have all created alternative realities for themselves online. Whether it's through makeup, selling makeup, creating alternative realities through illusions and magic, or through fashion empires, they all create alternative realities. And they're all expressing themselves in a perceived, authentic way to us and creating parasocial relationships between us. And then I talk about sociological interpretations, so which I kind of have been doing throughout this thesis. But I suggest that the use of social media is akin to the New Age Californian counterculture, and that social media influencers are contemporary totems that users follow, devote their time to, and often feel connected to, which is strengthened by parasocial relationships. The higher the perceived parasocial relationship, the more likely they are to keep gaining engagement and building community. Like, we feel like we know them on an intimate level. And I go into more detail about all the themes, and I'll leave these for you to read. By following the themes, I found some implications to my own study. And one implication was that I tried to steal, I guess steal isn't the right word, I was inspired or influenced by these influencers to use their own techniques to see if I could increase my own following online. And I really struggled. It was quite draining because I just didn't have the time while I was studying. I also talked about the implications of someone not being on social media. There's questions like, do they exist if they're not on social media? Of course they exist, but like, we might forget about them if we can't keep in touch with them. Also, many universities have turned to social media as a way of communicating with their students, and social media becomes like a news source, things like that. And then I talk about some limitations or recommendations for future study. The ability of the study is limited. My sample size was 11, 10 influencers and myself. If I did a larger sample size, maybe 100 Instagram influencers, it might be more generalizable. The reliability of the study is impacted by my own subjective biases. Probably really hard to get rid of bias in any way. As I am an avid social media user, the findings and interpretations are impacted by my own worldviews, my own social context. But because this was socially constructed, I believe that my bias was important. Future research can consider behavioral patterns of various generations to evaluate the impact this might have on the findings. The ability to replicate the study is impacted by the autoethnography analysis, because no findings from an autoethnography will ever be the same, because they are based purely on an own person's interpretations. The textual analysis could be really easy to reproduce. First, a researcher would need an access to an Instagram account, would have to find the 10 most followed influencers at the time of their research, take 3 screenshots of Instagram posts, and then analyze the profiles. And use the same New Age Californian characteristics I used. It could also be applied to other platforms too. The limitation was using 10 images and then cutting them down to 3. But this meant I could write more analysis. You could get a more randomized sample of images and influences in future research to eliminate certain biases. Let's now move to chapter 8, the conclusion. And this will probably be very quick because it's the conclusion and summary of everything in this thesis. And I'll read to you a little bit of my conclusion. Social media is a new religious movement that expresses elements of the New Age Californian counterculture. By analyzing my own social media use and sample of Instagram influencers, this thesis was able to provide an understanding of how social media is, in fact, a new religious movement in contemporary Western society. Key findings from the autoethnography demonstrated how many social media users, such as myself, use social media platforms to create alternative realities online, present the self as worthy of devotion from their followers, and that the smartphone is a New Age Californian Bible sacred text substitute, where the habitual and ritualistic behaviors a person partakes in constitutes their religion. This highlights how in contemporary Western society, social media is a new religious movement reflective of the New Age Californian counterculture. Key findings from the textual analysis using visual analysis techniques demonstrated how Instagram influencers convey some attributes of the New Age California counterculture on Instagram, and that they act as contemporary totems. That is, they are a cult of saints many social media influencers devote time to following. This demonstrates that Instagram is one social media platform reflective of the New Age California counterculture. And then I reiterate the implications and limitations and summarize all my chapters as you do in a conclusion. And that's it. We're at the reference list, and this is a long ass reference list. So to summarize, we have seen how social media is similar to a New Age California counterculture, and I like to call social media a New Age religion with a bit of a question mark at the end. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I do apologize that it was a bit of a long one. Hopefully my editing goes okay. But again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Ka kite!